this up over here. Can you see where it says participants, or can I only see that?
I don't see that.
Oh, sweet. Good. Okay. All right. 16. So we're waiting on 2 more people to join on Pear Deck.
This is right. Do you want our full screen to be like the Pear Deck presentation, or do you want it to be like that and then also have like the FaceTime thing in the corner?
It doesn't matter. You can have you're going to flip back and forth between these slides and your prompt.
Okay.
So whatever works best for you. If you want to just tab over, that's fine. You don't necessarily need to have the video up if you don't want to.
Okay.
Okay, just 2 more of you. Just entering that code. So we are missing, write this down. We're missing Eliza. Elena's on in here, right? Kennedy. And that is it. Okay. Hopefully they pop in. Okay, well, I don't want to waste your time. So I still need 2 of you guys to log in. So if you haven't gone to joinpd.com and put in this code, 2 of you have not done that. Or at least 1 of you. If I'm counted as a participant, then 1 of you hasn't. 15, okay. I'm missing someone then. I've got Eliza's not here, Elena, Kennedy. Who else am I missing? I'm like thinking through all your pods in my head. Maybe I'm not missing anyone. Okay. All right, well, we'll get started then. So here's the goal for today. Well, first let's talk pretty briefly about the timed writing when you practice with the Albright prompt. How did that go? Did you finish? No, Nate? Okay. Anybody else struggle with time? I'm trying to like see you guys in my little screens here. Okay, yeah, struggle with time. Okay, so that tells me we need to keep practicing, right? I asked you to set a timer for 40 minutes because you're going to have 45 to write. The thought being that on game day, you're probably gonna have some game day nerves, you know, whatever. That way it gives you 5 kind of bonus minutes to have some wiggle room if you need it. They're gonna actually give you 50 minutes, but 5 of those minutes are dedicated to uploading. So if you were to not spend your time well and kind of over budget and maybe write for 47 minutes and then try to upload in the last 3 and something were to go wrong, tough luck. So we want to make sure that we have enough time kind of set apart so that you can upload. And I'll give you more. They're releasing kind of all the time more information about what that's going to look like, and I'll pass that on to you. But 40 minutes is a little bit shorter to read and to annotate, but we're going to keep practicing that. I'm going to give you at least 1 of those a week kind of moving forward. So the more you practice, the better you get. If you want more practice, you could always look up old prompts online and use those to just end time yourself, set a timer and go for it. Kind of gauge what you need there. All right. Here's kind of how I'm hoping to focus the next couple weeks. This week I want to focus on your theses and introductions. Then we'll look at evidence. How do we select good evidence from the text? Next week will be commentary. Then we look at sophistication, and then we just start drilling for time before your actual exam on the 20th. Okay, so that's kind of where we're walking. Today, then that focus would be on the introduction and your thesis. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to kind of use bits of your Albright prompt and then respond to some of the examples that I show you on here. Okay, sounds good? Thumbs up if you're with me. Okay. It's so strange. I miss having you guys around. I wish you were all sitting at my kitchen table. You wouldn't fit, but we'd make it work. Okay, so we're gonna start this. The cool thing about Pear Deck is at certain points, you're gonna have an opportunity to respond in writing, and then I get to see that feedback. So I think this will be kind of a cool way for us to communicate as we move forward. So we're gonna talk about thesis statements first. I just wanna zero back in on the rubric here because that's how you're gonna be determined whether or not you actually get that thesis point. So for rhetorical analysis, you get a thesis point if you respond to the prompt with a defensible thesis that analyzes the writer's rhetorical choices. Okay, so what I see in that is that your thesis has to be defensible. It can't just be a summary of the prompt. It has to be argumentative. And it has to say something about the writer's rhetorical choices. If you look over here under the 0 point section, responses that do not earn this point fail to address the rhetorical choices the writer of the passage makes. Okay, so if you're not talking about rhetorical choices at all in your thesis, you're in danger of not getting the thesis point. So to stay safe, we want to make sure that we are mentioning those things. However, we're going to talk today about a way to do that that's a little bit more organic and not as listy. Did any of you guys use the graphic organizer that I posted when you wrote? I'm seeing like shaking heads, and then some people say ish. Okay, Olivia, did you find that helpful?
Yeah, I actually liked that quite a bit.
Okay. Those of you who did not use it, I'm gonna highly suggest that for the next time you print that out, because you can use it on the exam. Because of the situation that we're in, they're considering it to be open note, which means you get whatever graphic organizer list of rhetorical strategies that helps you. You can have those with you. So that organizer was meant to help you kind of walk through the text chronologically, develop a thesis, and play in your writing. So I would highly suggest that you use that. Hold on, Kennedy's coming in here. Hi, Kennedy. We are using something called Pear Deck today. You're going to need to go to joinpd.com, and then the code is MIPRV. MIPRV, and then it'll show you these slides that we're looking at. Okay, so as we talk about the thesis, this is what we're looking for in terms of what earns a point, what does not earn a point. It can be, look at the additional notes section, it can be more than one sentence, as long as they're kind of close together. You can't have like a filler sentence in between your two thesis sentences, but if you want to make it 2 sentences, you can. Technically, it can be anywhere within the response. So even I've noticed that a lot of times with our timed writing, by the end, you've kind of found your footing. And the thesis that you present in your conclusion is stronger and clearer than the one that you kind of like shakily write in your introduction. So if your thesis is in your conclusion, that's fine. I would suggest, if you have the time, even going back up to your introduction and tweaking that a little bit to make it stronger if you find that you know what you're talking about more by the time you get to the end. Okay. The thesis may establish a line of reasoning that structures the essay, but it doesn't have to earn the thesis point. It just has to be defensible and be argumentative. Line of reasoning in a rhetorical analysis essay is going to be different than when we write an argument, right? Because we're focusing specifically on rhetorical choices, that's kind of structuring your line of reasoning. Especially if we're moving through the text chronologically and analyzing the choices that they make as they go, that's going to be the line of reasoning there. So it looks a little bit different than when we did the argument responses. If at any point in this, guys, you have a question, just unmute yourself, okay? Okay, we looked at this already. So here's what I want you to do. This is where Pear Deck comes in. It's kind of cool. We're going to take a look at this sample thesis here. This came from a high scoring essay on the Albright prompt. So this isn't just like a thesis in isolation. It's from an essay that scored highly on the prompt that you responded to. And this is what they say. By contrasting hypotheticals and reality, providing examples and personal anecdotes, and strong repetition of the word persevere, Albright successfully conveys her message to these graduates that they must continue to fight for rights in the face of opposition and that they will succeed. Okay, so what I want you to do, and this is where I'm really intrigued to see how this happens, you should be able to respond on your screen. Do you see an option for that? Okay, so what makes this thesis statement effective? Okay, you can do bullet points, summarize it in a few words, but why is this an effective thesis for a high scoring essay? You can go ahead and write that in. Oh, cool. Okay, almost there. All right, let's take a look. Can you see the responses? Or can I just see this, or can you see it too? Okay, I need nods or thumbs up or something because I can't read your minds. Okay, so let's see. She gives rhetorical choices that Albright uses and then goes on to explain why those choices were effective and the purpose they played. Awesome. Yes, connects back to purpose there. In conveying her message to the audience, in this case, they even address what the audience is in terms of graduates. Sentence flows together really well. I'd be curious about what you mean by that. And her line of reasoning and defensible claim are really clear. That's true. Her line of reasoning being those rhetorical choices. It addresses purpose and message, rhetorical choices, and audience. So we're hitting a lot of the rhetorical situation, even in just the thesis. Awesome. Clear line of reasoning, defensive for both thesis. Good. Good. I see a lot of you guys are saying that it connects back to purpose. It addresses the audience. It's sophisticated. Good. It doesn't feel, this is where it's kind of interesting because it kind of is a list, right? But it doesn't feel like a list. And if we look at the prompt itself, they are moving through the text chronologically. So let me see if I'll hide these responses. This is the order in which things happen. At the beginning of her speech, she contrasts hypotheticals and reality. Like, we could do this, but the United States is doing this. Then in the middle, she starts to provide those personal anecdotes about experiences that she's had with women around the world. And then at the end is where she repeats persevere. I would also argue, I mean, you could talk about how she repeats the word persevere, but she also repeats the term if you aim high enough, which is another choice in and of itself, right? It's not just push hard, but you have to have high goals, which is part of her message too. Okay, so this is one example. This is what the actual reader who graded this essay had to say about the thesis. It earned a point because it clearly articulates a thesis with a defensible position. And that's really all they're looking for. So they get the point here. Now, we've talked about this before. If you don't have a strong thesis, then your essay is going to falter because it doesn't have a strong foundation. So even though it seems like you can get a thesis point pretty easily, if your thesis isn't strong, the commentary, the body part of your essay where you can earn the most points, you're not going to be able to have it stand on anything with substance if your thesis is weak. Here's the second one. This one also scored highly on the Albright prompt. By referencing the efforts of marginalized women who are fighting to make a difference, utilizing powerful diction and repetition, and illustrating American efforts to improve the world even further, Albright inspires a young generation of graduate students on the brink of adulthood with the future in their hands to never settle, always persevere, and fight to elevate the status of women around the world. Okay, now I want you to respond to this too. What makes it effective? Think about how it addresses the rhetorical situation. But I also want you to think about what might you critique about this thesis? How could it be even better? And you might have to think back to the prompt itself for that. It's a good thesis. It's scored highly, but I would argue we could even make it better. Waiting on about 5 of you. Some of you are speedy. I've started wearing these blue light glasses because I stare at my computer all day, but it totally trips me up because I can see the screen reflected in the thing here. Who is coming? Oh, okay. Hold on. Elena's coming in. Hi, Elena. We're using something called Pear Deck today. So I'm going to need you to go to joinpd.com. joinpd.com, and then the code is MIPRV. Like M as in mom, IPRV. Okay. All right, let's see. What did you guys? Oh, I'm waiting on one person here. Okay. Well, I'm just gonna show you what we have. Okay, let's see. Her word choice. Is that what you're saying you would critique, her word choice? I'm not sure who said that one. Like you would like, I'm curious as to what you would pick apart in terms of her word choice there. Okay, yep, ties back to purpose. It becomes wordy in the second half. She could have divided her thesis into 2 sentences. Okay, that's true. That's true. Even as I read it out loud, I kind of stumbled because there's a lot happening there. So that could make things more clear. Ties back to purpose. Okay. A lot of you guys are saying it should be shorter. Kind of listy. Yeah, that's what a lot of you guys are saying here. Does have sophisticated diction there. Now here's where what I would say. If you look at the prompt and the actual speech itself, this is not the order in which she moves through the speech. So this is where I would say that this one is more listy than the previous one, because if the author moves in their line of reasoning, they're talking about the speech out of order. So instead of talking about how Albright kind of builds as she goes, you're talking about the choices in isolation. Does that make sense, the difference there? So this person, if they're following the line of reasoning that they laid out in their thesis, then they're starting by talking about her discussion of visiting these marginalized women throughout the globe, which happens in the middle of the speech, illustrating American efforts to improve the world even further. That's the last thing that this person lists, but it's the first thing that happens in her speech. So this is where I would say this one's a little bit more listy because it's focusing on just the choices as opposed to analyzing the progression of the speech as a whole, how she builds her rhetoric as she talks. Do you see the difference there? You're not even, most of you are staring at the screen or at the looking down, so I don't even know what you think. With rhetorical analysis, you have to have those strategies in your thesis, but I would encourage you to move through your analysis of the text chronologically and to structure your thesis that way. It's just going to lead to a stronger analysis overall. The thing that I think this does really well, though, is acknowledge the rhetorical situation. This idea of like, this is a young generation of students who have the future in their hands, like they like they're incredibly impressionable at this point in their lives. Like they see nothing ahead of them but like what they can accomplish. And so that influences what she says and how she speaks to them, because they are more impressionable than they'll be at any other time in their life. Okay, it provides a defensible thesis to the rhetorical choices made to convey her message. It references these choices as the key rhetorical choices Albright makes. The thesis then links these decisions to its own commentary on Albright's message. So this is something that the reader liked. It didn't just list the thesis or list the strategies, but it also linked to the audience and the message in the thesis as well. So if you're taking notes, the thing that I would make note of is the things the readers tend to like is that you are clearly listing rhetorical strategies and clearly tying to the rhetorical situation in your thesis. When we first started doing rhetorical analysis way back in August and September, most of us just listed Albright uses this, this, and this to convey her purpose. That was kind of where our theses started. But we're at the end of the year now, so acknowledging the rhetorical situation with the thesis is really important and seems to be scoring highly. How about this one? This one did not score high, and you can just I'm going to ask that you revise this one to make it better in your response. Albright was able to successfully employ different rhetorical strategies, each of which helped Albright convey her message to the audience. Throughout the essay, the most effective devices employed were parallel structure, allusions, and metaphors. Okay, so this is from a student sample. It did not score, the whole essay did not score super highly. So what would you change? Go ahead and revise it. How would you make it better in your submission? Okay, I don't know, maybe this is just not right. Okay, throughout the essay, Albright employs parallel structure, allusions, and metaphors to convey her message to the audience of young female graduates. Okay, so we've addressed who the audience is here. We've made this better. I would even argue that instead of saying convey her message, you could say what her message is, right? Convey her message about this to the audience of young female graduates. That's also really important, and we'll talk about this later, but the fact that they're female and Albright is female and the first female Secretary of State, like that's a big deal in terms of speaker-audience relationship. Albright's effective usage of parallels between the past and now, allusions to conflict, and metaphors based on reality convey her message of perseverance to the group. Awesome, awesome, this looks great. So they're taking not just listing these rhetorical strategies here of parallelism, metaphors, allusions, but situating it in the context of the speech itself. Good. That's awesome. I'm just kind of scrolling quickly through here. Does this mean you're, I'm new to Pear Deck, so it looks like some of you are still typing here. Succeeded in employing parallel structure, allusions, and metaphors. Okay, good. So they address the audience here. I would say that this is the strongest, where was it? That situating those choices within the context of the actual text itself is important. So when we just list like parallel structure, allusions, and metaphors, it's a list, right? But when we situate it in the context of the text itself, suddenly we've broadened our analysis there. And we're not just kind of nitpicking little things that we notice, but instead are talking about the piece as a whole. Okay, how about this one? This is another one. Albright conveys her message to the audience by using the events that came after some of the most historical events and encounters with women in other countries to motivate the graduating class. You have to read that one a couple times to myself just to. Albright conveys her message to the audience by using the events that came after some of the most historical events and encounters with women in other countries to motivate the graduating class. So try again. Don't just say how you would revise it, but try to actually revise it and make it better. Okay, give you like another minute here. Good. Albright conveys her message of perseverance to her audience of young women graduates by using post-historical events. That could probably be cleaned up, as well as her personal experiences with other women. And I would add around the globe to contextualize that, to motivate and instill a feeling of hope in the graduating class. So to motivate and instill. Good. About her own life experiences. Good. By referencing well-known historic events and the struggle and the determination of the U.S. through those events, as well as personal encounters she has had with women who are standing up throughout the world, she fosters motivation within the graduating class to do the same. Good. So good, you guys are really cleaning that up. Just the language itself was convoluted, right? Difficult to understand. Albright delivers a message to the young woman of Mount Holyoke College, good, by relying upon contrast between the past and present of America and the expert of other strong, independent women she's met worldwide. I would, again, what is her message? Adding that into your thesis will just make that stronger too. Guys, these look really, really good. Yeah, it was definitely pretty clunky. Good. Okay, so this is kind of part one. We're going to focus on your thesis and your introduction today. I'm going to ask that for homework, and this is an assignment that's already posted on Classroom and it's been there all week, that you revise your thesis, okay? I'm also going to ask you to revise your introduction, so those two things kind of happen together. But make sure you're addressing specific strategies chronologically, okay, as they move throughout the text, and not just listing those vague devices like parallelism, allusion, metaphor, like we saw in that example. That's listy, that's vague. But if you can ground those rhetorical choices within the context of the speech itself, they start to be more strategic, and you can see how they influence the text as it moves. Okay, so that's kind of part one. I have a graphic organizer for you in Classroom. Briefly, let's talk about introductions here. In terms of what is the purpose, this is something I've noticed with a lot of you. You'll turn in your timed writing and it will be incomplete. But your introduction is like this long and it's awesome. But you've run out of time to do your body paragraphs. So that's kind of the common theme that I've seen in a lot of people. So let's talk about what is the purpose of the introduction, how can we do that quickly and efficiently and still be effective. A lot of you want to like set up this really beautiful, like pull your reader in thing, and it's so good, but we don't have time. We don't have time. So how do we do this kind of quickly and still be sophisticated without spending 10 minutes trying to write it? Okay, so first and foremost, we have to address the rhetorical situation. We've got to talk about space. Who's the speaker? What's the purpose? All of that stuff. You want to engage your reader. So that is where the hook comes in, right? With my sophisticated language, maybe starting off with a strong image. That's a way to draw my reader in. Establish your own credibility. In this case, we're really focusing on the speaker here. So what makes the speaker credible? And then in this case, setting a purpose for your argument, which would be the author's purpose. What is the author's purpose? So really, do you remember way, way, way back at the beginning of the year when we wrote rhetorical précis? You did one for, what was it called? It was the essay about being ugly, where it was way, way back. The idea that your introduction is really just about setting up that rhetorical situation, getting your thesis in there, hooking your reader. But we want to do that in a way that's quick and efficient.
Mrs. Wright, I have a question.
Yeah.
So for the credibility part, we're establishing the author's credibility.
Right. So in this case with Albright, what makes her credible to speak?
Okay. And then also, for like the setting a purpose for the argument, would we kind of include like why it's important, kind of like the like connecting it to like a global scale kind of a thing, or no?
Can you give me an example of what you're thinking? With the Albright prompt, maybe?
Just kind of like why it would be important to the audience that she's talking to, I guess.
Right. So it's the connection to audience is key there. So if you want to make like the big bold claim of, we saw this in a couple of the example theses where Albright conveys her message in order to, convince these women that they can achieve, whatever they set their minds to if they aim high enough. Okay, that would be that connection to purpose and kind of like a bigger way. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so always come back to speaker. And that's the difference with this and argument, right? Because you guys crush the argument essay in terms of establishing your own purpose and credibility, but now we're focusing on somebody else's. So this is where you might need to toggle over to the prompt. I want you to just look at the prompt itself, not the whole speech, but what are you given at the very beginning before you even start to read, and what's the rhetorical situation, okay? So in your response, you could just kind of fill out a quick space, use speaker, purpose, audience, context, exigence, just really briefly there, based on what is given to you in the prompt itself before you even start to write. You could just put a few words next to each thing. You don't have to write like a full sentence or anything. When you are good, will you give me like a little thumbs up so I can see you? Mr. Guy. Okay, thanks. So I'm like toggling between you guys. Kale, that aesthetic, that exposed brick wall aesthetic is pretty sweet. I give you like a minute and a half. Okay, awesome, guys. Some of you are still finishing up here. So let's talk through this quickly here. So for speaker, you all nailed it. It's Madeline Albright, shock of all shocks. But what is important to note about her? Okay, it's not just that she's Madeline Albright, but what is she? She's Secretary of Yes.
She's the first female Secretary of State.
Okay, that's so important. That's so important. Not only is she Secretary of State, she's female and she's the first female to hold this position. That's a big deal. Noting that this is a woman in a position of power talking to women who have aspirations and dreams. Like that's really important to note as part of this rhetorical situation here. So for purpose, some of you, I saw this down here, it's not available in the prompt. That's true. We can't really tell that just from the prompt itself, but we know from our reading that she's trying to encourage them to aim high and persevere as they face challenges. Who is she speaking to? The graduating class at a college, okay? Again, important to note that these are women. So it's a woman speaking to women. It's a women's college. They're graduating, so they are on the cusp of new things. They're about to embark on the world for the first time. So that's important. Context, good, 1997. We've got the Clinton presidency happening here. Some of you may note that we're kind of, as a nation, making a turn towards like peace. Somebody noted that down here. Yeah, making a shift towards peace and civil rights in the world. So larger kind of context there. Now, in terms of exigence, remember exigence is like what's the hairball in their throat that's making them speak? Like they got to cough it out. You could get super literal here and say the exigence is that she was asked to speak. Why is she speaking? They asked her to. But that's pretty baseline, right? So we can make some inferences that as a woman in a position of power and as the first woman to do this, we can infer that she's experienced some setbacks in her life, right? Like this wasn't an easily won accolade for her, an easily won position. And so she has these unique experiences. Some of you noted this in your renditions here. She has these unique experiences that she can share with these women who are kind of coming up in her shadow, of what does it mean to persevere. Like she knows what it means to persevere and to aim high because she's done it, even in the face of opposition. So that's literally she's being asked to speak, but there's a reason why she wants to speak to this group of women, and it's rooted in her own experiences. And that's all inference that we can pull from the fact that she's a woman, first Secretary of State. That's a woman, the time of life in which she's living, all of those things there. Okay, so that's our rhetorical situation. We want to make sure that we are addressing that in the introduction. So let's see how well this person did it. This will look a little bit familiar to you. You'll recognize the thesis here. This is the full paragraph for one of those theses that we just looked at. We have come a long way since women gained voting rights. Okay, that's their hook. Yet we have not gone for enough as gender equality remains an issue unresolved. Remember, these are drafts, right? So this is just how exactly it was written. For means far. The glass ceiling remains unbroken, and women continue to fight on all fronts for rights they deserve, rights that should be inherent. So this is them hooking the reader. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, in her speech to the women graduating from Mount Holyoke College, emphasizes the need to continue this struggle and strive for gender equality. By contrasting hypotheticals and reality, providing examples and personal anecdotes, and strong repetition of the word persevere, Albright successfully conveys her message to these graduates that they must continue to fight for rights in the face of opposition and that they will succeed. Okay, so I'm not going to ask you to respond in writing here, but just kind of verbally, if people want to chime in, what are things that stand out to you that make this effective? This is a high scoring essay.
When she says the glass ceiling remains unbroken, just using like that metaphor.
Yes, that's the dominant image that stood out to me too. Like you see that that image, and she actually steals that from Albright. There's a line that's really powerful. I'm gonna botch it if I try to. Well, I'll paraphrase it, but she says something about women who are still like, whether they're bumping up against a glass ceiling or rising from a dirt floor, is the phrase that Albright uses in the speech. So she's kind of borrowing that own language there, which is good. What else stands out to you about what makes this effective?
After like she gives her like this is what she does, these are like the rhetorical things she uses. She doesn't say like to convey her message, but she says like to convey her message of
Right.
blank, and it's very clear that she understands what her message is.
Good. And she kind of repeats that twice, right? This message that they have to continue to fight for these rights. And she says that she emphasizes the need to continue the struggle and strive for gender equality. So we could even, argue that this is her purpose, right? What's her purpose? To emphasize this need to continue the struggle. This is what I want you to do. We could even sub the word persuade for emphasize, like persuade people to see this need. Anything else that you guys notice? Good job, Lena. Has this writer hit all the elements of the rhetorical situation?
No, I don't think so.
Why?
Because it doesn't give context like the year. Maybe I
Okay.
don't know.
She doesn't I keep saying she, it could be he or she, I don't know. Doesn't explicitly say the year. However, I would argue that there is some context in this first section up here, talking about we've come a long way since women gained voting rights, but we're not far enough yet. Kind of sets the larger context. We've made strides, but there are still strides to be made. But you're right, we could mention specifically the date, the presidency, those things would be good to add. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Again, you'll notice the thesis. Madeleine Albright's commencement speech in 1997 at Mount Holyoke College came at a time of peace and prosperity for American society. However, in the speech, she urges her audience to seek out problems that still exist in the world and to help fix them. By referencing the efforts of marginalized women who are fighting to make a difference, utilizing powerful diction and repetition, and illustrating American efforts to improve the world even further, Albright inspires a young generation of graduate students on the brink of adulthood with the future in their hands. So many prepositional phrases. To never settle, always persevere, and fight to elevate the status of women around the world. How about this one? What does it do that it does well? It does well.
It
Sorry.
has context compared to the other one because it's talking about 1997 and how it was a time of peace and prosperity for America. Even though, I mean, there's some truth to that, but that's kind of like during the time of the Gulf War and in the Middle East when America was at war for oil. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I
So
don't know if it's completely accurate, but
that's where kind of like with the argument prompt, you don't want to make claims that you don't know are true. But if you know a lot about this time, then feel free to say something about that. That's where we'll talk about this in the coming weeks too, but and the sophistication point, one way to get that is by acknowledging the broader rhetorical situation. So if you can situate this speech within a larger historical context like that, like you have that knowledge, then do it. If you don't have that knowledge, don't pretend like you do. So if you're confident there, like Joseph, if you were to kind of set that nuance there and talk about how, we're on the cusp of peace, but at the same time, all this other stuff is happening, which makes this message all the more important, that would be situating the text within that larger context. Really good. I really like how, again, I'm saying she uses this transition here. I think that's kind of a powerful turn. Sets the context as positive, right? And then says, however, despite this position that the nation's in, Albright still is urging her audience to push farther and deeper and to aim higher, which kind of just underscores that purpose and that message as important within this time frame. All right. How about this one? What advice would you give to this writer here? Madeleine Albright, in her speech to a class of graduating women in college, used certain words and phrases to motivate these women to move forward with their lives. She encouraged them to gather up courage to achieve what they have always wanted to achieve and to fight for themselves and their country. Albright conveys her message to the audience by using the events after some of the most historical events and encounters with women in other countries to motivate the graduating class. If you had to describe this in one word, what word would you use?
Vague.
Yes, good. We're on the same wavelength. It is so vague, right? She uses certain words and phrases. What words and phrases does she use? To motivate them to move forward with their lives. In what direction? She has a pretty specific direction. She tells them to pursue justice there at the end. This part here, she encouraged them to gather up courage to achieve what they've always wanted to achieve and to fight for themselves and their country. The word that comes to my mind is cliche. Like it's vague and it's a bit cliche. Like achieve what you've always wanted to achieve. Like it's an overused phrase. I'm not going to ask that you write here because I want to respect your time and wrap this up. But we could see that it's vague here in ways that the other two responses were very clear. We don't have a clear context. Okay, we get Madeline Albright, but we don't have the nuance of who she is as a speaker. They haven't mentioned the fact that she's Secretary of State or the first female. We don't get the larger context of when is this situated. We don't really get a ton about the audience here. She talks about message and purpose, but it's vague overall. Okay, so where you can be clear, be clear. So here's your homework for, I think I have it due either Thursday night. I think I have it due late tomorrow night. I want you to revise your thesis and your introduction, which is kind of, all one and the same. So I ask on the graphic organizer that you copy and paste what you had originally from your timed essay into one box and then revise it in the box below. Make sure you've hooked your reader. Okay, you don't have to rack your brain for the most creative hook in the world, but engage your reader. Make sure the rhetorical situation is fully addressed, and then end with a thesis that has a clear connection to purpose and those rhetorical strategies. Just a side note, I know I'm saying a lot about like make your intro kind of snappy. If we were writing a longer essay that you had weeks to write, then of course I'd want you to focus on making that introduction really strong, really engaging. Just in this situation, your body is the most important, your thesis and your body. So if you have extra time at the end of your essay to go back and make your introduction stronger, do it, use that time. But it's most important that you have a strong body. So those of you who are super struggling with time, I would say write your thesis and then write your body. And then with the time that's left, go back to your introduction. And I'm only saying that to those of you who are very and we've had these conversations, but who are really struggling to finish. And as we drill, we can go back and kind of increase that there. But the body is where you're going to get the most of your points. Okay, so I think the thing that you would lose by not having a fleshed out introduction is I would highly doubt that they would give you the sophistication point. But if you have a strong body that's connected to a strong thesis, then you're going to do really well. Okay, any questions about that, guys? Or about anything that we talked about today? Okay. The thing that I'm hearing most from you is that you want, here, I'm going to stop this sharing. You want more practice. And that's the feedback that I've gotten, kind of an overwhelming response, more practice. So we're going to keep practicing. The College Board's put out a few more videos that I think are pretty good. So I'm going to send some of those your way. And then I'm also just going to send you some resources that you can use to supplement on your own in the areas where you feel weak. So if you feel like I'm really good at this, but I'm really bad at conclusions, or I'm really bad at commentary, I'm going to push out some resources next week where you can kind of pick and choose what you need to focus on. Last thing that I wanted to talk to you about, was my request for videos from you. Did you guys see that? The lit class actually has already kind of put together one for you guys that I'm going to push out next week. But I'm hoping to push one out to the sophomores from you guys of why they should consider taking laying next year. So in the Google Classroom post, I've got some suggestions of like questions you can answer. Film just like a really quick video on your phone, like less than 30 seconds. And if you email that to me, then I can kind of splice it together into a video. If you're going to just say like really terrible things about the class, then send those to me privately and we can talk through it. Okay. And I'll send out the lit stuff to you guys soon so you can be thinking about that for next year. Sound good? Okay, you doing all right? Happy to see you. I don't know if I told you that yet. All right, if you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a great, great, great rest of your day, okay? All right, I'll see you guys maybe Friday for a benediction, if you want to pop in, okay? Elena, don't even say that. I did it for you last Friday and you did not even show up.
I'm sorry. I slept in. It was a mistake. I didn't have school, so I slept.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. Okay. Have a great day, guys. Email me if you need me. Happy Wednesday. There's the sirens. Okay. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.